La plus grande de nos richesses ne se mesure pas en millions. Nous vous faisons découvrir des ovnis pour vous permettre d'en devenir un, vous aussi. Sportifs, entrepreneurs, artistes, ils nous partagent chaque semaine leurs récits de véritables trésors d'informations.
Nare, welcome on the OVNI Capital Podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So happy to have you. I have to say, I think you have one of the most unexpected backgrounds in VCs.
Thank you.
You have a PhD in chemical
physics
from
right.
Harvard University.
Mm-hmm.
So I should call you doctor, actually, from that point on. And you studied, you studied nanomaterials.
That's right.
And I'd love to hear how you went from the labs to, spreadsheets.
Absolutely. So I was at Harvard doing my PhD work and working on metal-based nanomaterials, using them to produce commodity chemicals, essentially, and understand those pathways and how to make them more sustainable. So doing this research that was very climate-oriented, really enjoyed it, really studying it at a very detailed level. But at the end of the day, it's just so detailed and narrow that it's hard to see how this research is going to go out and really impact the world. So I left my PhD with the feeling of I really want to work on problems that are global, that I can really feel that I'm having an impact, and across more industries, not just in a narrow field. So I made the decision to go into the management consulting space. So a really big change, going all the way to the business side. And to be honest, that was a really great fit for me. I really enjoyed the business aspect. I really enjoyed working with our clients. I moved out to San Francisco for it and worked a lot with late-stage startups in the San Francisco Bay Area. So about Series C to post-IPO, a lot of the software tech clients, the big names, flashy names you see all across the city, they were my clients, and it was really enjoyable to work with them and help them with their problems and really feel like you're really helping them make the difference. What was really great about that role was we only worked on the revenue side. So it was growth strategies, commercialization strategies, helping bring new products to market or turnarounds of different products and offerings. So really seeing what does it take, what research do you need to do in order to be successful across the whole business or a specific line. After doing that for a couple of years, I had about 2 to 3 clients in the climate and energy space. And I really loved working with those clients because it was an area I understood, I really loved. That's where I wanted my long-term career to be. And I knew this was more of a stepping stone. So I was reaching a place where I was like, if I stay, I need to help build this whole practice area of climate and energy in this consulting firm. Or I can find my space in the climate and energy space outside of the firm. And it was, I wanted to do something different. I didn't see myself committing to consulting for another 10 to 20 years. So I started, exploring what else I could do and talking to people. I spoke to some people in the venture world and realized, this could be a really great fit for me. I like going from project to project, having that variety. That was something I really enjoyed about consulting versus my PhD, which was one thing, like very in depth. So that breadth, like working with people, building relationships with clients, I would have that too in venture. And the benefit of being in venture was it's a lot more technical. So I could really use my scientific background, understand these technologies, and really make a difference in helping build them, bring them to market, especially with that commercialization background that I had in the consulting space.
Yeah, and I think it's really fascinating for me to understand what you brought from the labs, in the academic world, because you were working on research papers. And as you said, like a lot of those papers are very in-depth, but they never turn into anything sometimes in the real world. So what did you bring from that world to the venture capital world?
I think the biggest thing is the breadth of scientific knowledge. Essentially, doing an undergrad in chemistry, a PhD in chemical physics, studying different, whether it was engineering, bioengineering, chemical engineering, those different classes, understanding materials at a very fundamental level. It's a huge leverage to be able to bring the fundamental understanding of how do these chemicals work? How do these materials work? And what does that ultimately mean? And how you might scale the technology, how it'll work in the end product. What is the other things that are possible that maybe even the founder hasn't thought about? And that's a really big, I think, advantage is like really understanding something at a fundamental level, but also having that high level perspective to be able to bring this, small atomic level thing up to the real world of like, what difference does this make?
For sure. And now you work at Voyager.
I do, yeah.
So Voyager is a climate tech fund.
Yes.
That has 450 million assets under management.
That's
and
right.
It was created in 2021 by two wonderful GPs, Sarah Plastic and Sierra Peterson.
Yes.
Talk to me about that. Like, how did you choose Voyager? Because you could have gone anywhere.
Oh, I don't know if that would be the case, but I call it serendipity. Essentially, I was looking for a role in venture in climate tech specifically. I saw the posting for Voyager looking for an investor role. I had a friend who was at another climate tech VC reach out to them and try to put me in touch because I was like, all I know from venture is that it's relationship based. So I want to get in touch with them before even sending in an application. She sent along my resume and I was immediately put into the interview hiring process. It just went really smoothly. And I really felt like the cultural fit was really there. And I was very much looking for a venture fund where it was going to be collaborative. It was going to be intellectually stimulating. It was not going to be internally competitive because, you hear those horror stories.
Of course.
Exactly. And I was like, I'm avoiding that. I want a collaborative, stimulating environment. And I just knew from talking to Sierra and Sarah when I was interviewing, that's exactly what I was going to get. And from day one, it delivered.
I bet. Just like full disclosure, I am an LP in the fund,
yes.
So I was very impressed by Sierra, who I met first. But I think Sierra worked for the Obama administration, right? So how it looks like when you look at your team, you've got a blend of people from policy background and entrepreneurial DNA and scientists like yourself. So I'd love to hear about the edge it gives you as well. Like what are the things that you see that maybe others don't?
Yeah. So what I love about our team is I feel like we are each a piece of a puzzle piece that when we each all come together, we complete the picture. So Sierra brings this incredible knowledge in financing, policy, just economics, and very systems level thinking. Sarah, technology, commercialization, understanding customers, because she's helped bring products to market, very technical, but also can think really big of what are the big swings. So really, really bright. My other team members, we have another PhD in mechanical engineering with consulting and venture background. My other teammate did 0 to 1 venture building in more of the software space. My other team member did more of a private equity background, so more late stage investing. And then I have this more fundamental science background with some commercialization strategy. So all of us fit together to really understand the full stack of technology from fundamental to large scale, customer journeys, whether it's software or deep tech, the investment from early stage investing to late stage investing, what does it need to look out for a buyout, for an IPO. With the private equity background, I've seen a lot of pre and post IPO companies, so we really bring it together, and I think that's what we really bring to the venture world as a team. It's such a strong picture when you look at all of us instead of one individual piece, and I think that's why we've been successful as a team. Whether it's winning deals or fundraising, it's really the strength that it speaks for itself.
And you and I met in SF a couple of months ago when we were hosting an event at the Deep Tech conference. I was just wondering if you could tell us a bit more about the founders that were on stage, that you put on stage, and the type of companies you invested in.
Absolutely. So maybe let me tell you about the event. And I think it'll put it into picture why that was the way it was. So I was hosting this event on materials, and I really wanted to portray to people the whole supply chain, value chain of materials, so that they could really understand. There's people in the audience that are not experts. They're just people, not technical or even in venture or startups. They're just maybe students interested in the space. So I really wanted to lay out what it takes to get materials to market. So every founder kind of fit into that supply chain. And I tried to go from like the early supply chain to all the way to the end product. So we had a founder in the mining space of, extracting raw materials. We had founders that are more processing materials, refining it, initial like product development, alloy material production, to founders that were more building the end products using, let's say, metal-based materials in their products. So whether they're making solar panels, electric motors, or supersonic engines and planes, I was trying to represent that whole supply chain, of value chain. I always confuse the two. So I think across that, Lida is a great example of a company with founders Kira and Linus out of Santa Barbara, UC Santa Barbara.
Shout out to Santa Barbara.
Shout out to Santa Barbara. Oh, yeah. Where they're using a microwave-based furnace to make materials. So they can make a very broad range of materials.
So impressive.
And with their microwave-based furnace, it goes through a different, let's say, chemical pathway to produce the alloys or produce the materials that they're trying to make. And so the energy requirement is a lot lower. So it's a huge advantage. And this goes back to the fundamental understanding of the science. When you understand that making materials is overcoming an energetic pathway, you understand that this microwave goes through a different pathway that is pretty underutilized, whereas doing a chemical processing where you're just putting in heat or pressure, it requires overall a lot more energy. So that was something I really noticed, and I led that investment. And I was like really impressed of like, wow, this could really change things. It's a truly different foundational way to make materials.
That's incredible. I was very impressed. I'd love to hear your perspective on, those founders typically who are building the companies you just mentioned are deeply technical. And sometimes if you come from the academic world, it might be a bit of a stretch to, bridge the other side, which is the commercial world. And how do you support the founders and how do you help them, have developed those skills that maybe sometimes they lack because they weren't exposed to it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think if I were to take a step back, first, if they're really, really technically minded, where they haven't made that switch from being an academic thinker to a founder building a business, we probably wouldn't invest in them as just a stage gate, just because that's not what it's going to take to be successful. Someone who's building a technology. Someone who's doing research or technology, it's more of like you're building a business and that technology is your means to build that business.
Yeah.
So we need to really see that the technical person has evolved and has learned that they need to serve the customers. They need to be building a business and be thinking of that path ahead. So if, we want large businesses, big exits. So if you need to build a company that's worth $1 billion, what does that look like in, let's say, 10 years? And working backwards from that. Okay, so if that's a facility that's 10,000 kilotons of a product, that means you probably need a demo facility that's 1,000 kilotons. That means you need a pilot that's 100 kilotons or 100 tons at that point. And then today you're in the lab scale, maybe doing 1 ton or something like that. And that kind of thinking in reverse and developing that pathway from a tech perspective, from the customer perspective, and being able to bring the different parallels together. What team are you going to need? What expertise do you need to bring that you don't have so that it complements you and helps you build to that endpoint that we're all trying to get to?
Yeah. And in terms of geographical focus, you have people in SF and people in London as well, and I think in New York.
Yeah.
At least you were there for Climate Week.
Yes, we have a team. We have a team there as well.
How do you look at the world, basically? Where do you invest? Where are most of your investments?
So we invest across North America and Europe, and we see it as a really big advantage to look across both continents and understand them at a deep level. One of the big, I think, advantages we bring is by understanding both, we see where the tailwinds are, where the customers are, that even founders don't always know. So we have portfolio companies in the US that were like, it really makes sense to go to Europe, whether it's moving the whole company or having a subsidiary. Like your customers are actually really there. There's all this regulation that you maybe didn't even know about that is, a huge tailwinds, customer pull that can make your journey a lot easier, and vice versa, where there could be a European company that's like, here, the US, you're maybe in AI especially, like it could make sense to be in the US where there's a bit more funding for that.
For sure.
The customers are maybe in the US for specific industries. That's where the pull is. So just seeing both sides of that coin and helping bridge that gap of whether it's policy, regulation, capital, customers, or just, other supporting ecosystems, we get to provide that knowledge.
Yeah. And I think when it comes to climate, the cultures and the philosophies are vastly different.
Yes,
I say this
exactly.
from the standpoint of someone who's lived in the US and obviously is from Europe. But what's your perspective on the biggest sort of differences in terms of mindset when it comes to climate?
So if we look across, let's say, the US, not Canada. Canada is very climate friendly, but the US, we all know, is not very supportive of climate as an industry. So I think it's different in that sense where the policies are not all there to support bringing climate to market. But there's a different, let's say, way to look at the same coin, So there are companies that are, let's say, doing metal production, rare earth refining, rare earth element refining. And those companies, they can be climate companies. They're doing things in a cleaner way, but they're in the US and there's a lot of support for those kind of industries, anything in critical minerals and material production that will be more supply chain resilience. If they're doing something in a cleaner way, it's a climate company, at least to us. But we don't need to call it climate, and it still satisfies everyone's kind of picture.
Is it a swear word today?
Is it what?
Is it a swear word in the US right now? Or like,
depends on who you're talking to.
Yeah, and do you think? I mean, I don't want to get into too much details, but just I want to get into the messy part of that because the geopolitical climate at the moment we've all seen, is complex, and I just wonder, is it harder to find the next climate unicorn or to convince Trump that climate change is a real thing and not a hoax?
I think it's much more of the just communicating it in a different way that speaks to the same needs, let's say. So this is a trend that's happening in Europe as well as North America and the US, right? Supply chain resiliency, needing critical minerals, whether it's for defense applications, batteries, energy storage, this whole resiliency of just having and producing your own energy to materials that go into weapons or batteries, etc. So trends are both happening on both continents. And in that sense, it's the same, let's say, trends across continents, but also it's a climate trend that if we don't call it climate, it's still happening. If we need to make, let's say, iron production or refine rare earths or make titanium or all these other critical minerals, advanced materials, that supply chain needs to be de-risked from a domestic production or, in Europe, production in Europe. And to bring that production to, let's say, the US, there are certain things you just can't do because of the environmental effects. Like refining is really dirty of certain metals. You couldn't even bring them to the US if you wanted to because of environmental impacts. So already, if you want to do it in the US, you have to do it cleaner. No one's going to tout that benefit and say, oh my God, you're a climate company because you're doing metal production of this because they might not say that it's cleaner, but they will hinge on the fact that we're bringing it domestically, where we have higher efficiency, we have better yields, and all these other benefits, and they'll lean on that aspect. So I really think it's a communication and being able to tell the story and what is really important today in order to raise or get customers and survive this geopolitical environment.
I mean, the point is that, it takes every 4 years there's a different administration, whereas you see it's a long-term model. So you're supposed to kind of help the founders who might be, for like 10, 20 years, 25 years stretch their companies. So I think the fact that you have such a diverse team as well and, some knowledge and policy is very helpful so that you're not exposed to geopolitical volatility
exactly
as much.
And we really try to invest in take out the politics, take out the geopolitical things that are happening, and just look at the company on its own, right? Is it a good company? Take the climate out of it too. Is it a good company that on its own is building something that customers want, that is going to be cheaper, better, faster than the alternatives? That alone is going to be so powerful that it will have the customer pool. It will build itself, essentially scale itself, where maybe you'll have tailwinds or headwinds, but you will survive because you are just building an amazing company.
Yeah. I wanted to talk to you real quick about batteries, because you're in Europe right now and you've seen there's been a few bankruptcies in, that space, and Northvolt as well. And I'd love to get your view as an expert on that space specifically and what we could be excited about in the future.
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. We've definitely seen that field evolve. From what we have seen at Voyager, or let's say the thesis that we're going about, we recently made an investment in a company called Electroflow. They're doing DLE, essentially doing lithium production to LFP, so for battery purposes. And they're simplifying the process of making LFP from a 10-step process to a 1-step process. So a huge benefit.
And LFP stands for lithium
iron phosphate.
Okay, yeah.
So the major chemistry that's China is pushing forward, and it's going to be ubiquitous pretty soon. I think the general thesis is that we can't bring what China is doing and try to do it domestically. We can't just copy and paste to the US or to Europe. We really have to do things in a better, different manner in order to compete. So that can mean bringing that same chemistry LFP domestically and being able to scale it, but doing it in a different technology, Electroflow being a great example of that. That is a better way to produce, a cheaper way to produce, to actually have any chance of being competitive. The other way to look at the thesis is to look at chemistries that China maybe isn't doing quite yet. That could be sodium chemistries, that could be lithium sulfates or LVMO. There's all these different chemistries that you then have to look at the use cases and where that battery chemistry has an edge. And does it make sense to invest in that chemistry? I think what we are not necessarily looking at is component plays. I think those are really tough in the battery space from a venture perspective. The timelines, you're reliant on your customers to scale up the technology and just really dependent on them. So component plays we're less excited about, but companies that are really building the whole chemistry package is what we would look for.
Super exciting. You guys have made 34, I think, investments so far.
I think across our many funds, yes.
Across your many funds?
Yes.
What are the last 2 or 3 investments that you made, just to give us a sense of what you're looking at?
Yeah. Electroflow is actually one of our most recent ones.
Okay.
The announcement was, last week?
Okay, cool. So very recent.
That one's the most recent one. Prior to that I can recall, of the Lida was a recent one this year. And prior to Lida was AstraMechanica. That's the company building supersonic jet engines and airplanes.
Okay, love it. Cool. And they're all based in the US, so do you have some that are also
Those 3 are based in the US. Earlier this year, we invested in API. That's an API infrastructure layer for EV charging, and they're based in Berlin.
Okay, got it. When you think back of, the last few years of investment...
And one more recent investment was, actually, I don't know if we can announce that. I'll hold it. I don't know.
Double check.
I was like, oops, there was another one in Europe.
Right, take a break. You can tell me later on offline. I was just thinking, over the last few years of investment, you've had experience in the labs and management consulting and as an investor. What are the things that you used to believe that you now don't believe in anymore?
Oh, that's a really great question. Like technology-wise or trends?
There's always trends and cycles as well. Sometimes we're all kind of really bullish on something and then realize actually, the world wasn't ready for it, or, something happened.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think when I was, let's say, in grad school or in consulting, I think I had a much more naive perspective. And
as you should.
as we should. And I was like, oh, carbon capture, like that's the big solution, right? If we can just figure that out, it would be so easy, right? And from a tech perspective, yeah, if we just take CO2 out of the air, it would solve some problems. But then when you layer on the complexity of like, it has to be a business, it becomes a lot harder. And I think that's one where I've definitely didn't realize, like, yeah, that's probably not one that at least venture is a good fit for. Other areas, I think I always was skeptical of the hydrogen space. It was really popular 5-10 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, oh, hydrogen, if we
Yeah.
can just do that. And I was always like, no.
Why is that? Is it from a technical standpoint? You think it's too complex?
From all the different aspects. So at least when hydrogen was really hot, I think everyone was like, it's the next like oil, right? And I was like, no. It's like it just doesn't make sense to go from oil or batteries to hydrogen for certain applications. So I think I was always skeptical that some people just like didn't understand that it's not going to work for everything. And just the storage and transport of it is really difficult. So you have to be very careful, like what end use it's for. So hydrogen for ammonia production could make sense because it's on site, same place. So you don't have to worry about transport, for example. And the economy for it already exists. Whereas hydrogen for cars, why, like, doesn't really make sense. You have to build a whole infrastructure so that you have hydrogen to refuel, and then where do you have to produce the hydrogen? And it has to be green hydrogen, right? So that we can, have reached this goal. So just these kind of like use cases, once you start looking at it, does it make sense for long haul transport or short haul transport? Does it make sense for cars, trucking, rail? And once you break it all down, it doesn't make sense for a lot of things. And I think investors now understand that, but initially they didn't.
And what do you think is one technology that's maybe not ready yet, but that you'd love to exist when you think about? Just to give you an example, I was once pitched solar sheets, basically. So it's like this protective layer between the Earth and the sun just to diminish the global warming. And I thought that sounded amazing. Yeah. It's complex, obviously. There isn't a business for it if anyone's listening. But is there anything that, you think about and that you'd like, I'd love for that to be available now?
I think, in space manufacturing, I think from initial perspective, it's super exciting. And there is benefits to, let's say, making certain materials in space. It is a growing area. There are companies working on it. It could come to fruition in the next couple of years. So that's one where I'm definitely keeping an eye on and really interested.
Can you tell us, like you were explaining it to 10-year-olds?
Okay.
That would be a good thing.
Absolutely.
Because it's hard to imagine that's a better solution to do it in outer space.
So certain materials, let's say you're making a crystal of silicon or germanium, like these kind of materials that go into especially electronics that have to be extremely precisely and perfectly made. It's really hard to do on Earth because of the gravity that we experience. So if you go to space where you don't have gravity, there's essentially less tension and force. So these crystals can grow in a, let's see, unpushed ways. They're free to grow as big as they can, whereas gravity pulls them. It creates tension, so they grow as smaller than they would in space. Now, NASA and other entities have done manufacturing in space, so we know it works. We know you can make bigger crystals, better purities, like all these benefits, but we definitely have not commercialized this. So there's good precedence that there is a benefit. It's not just a scientific experiment. The scientific experiments have been done, but the question is can we now commercialize it? Does it make sense?
Yeah.
And how do we implement that?
Yeah.
Now, this is where it's a nice one where because of the developments in aerospace, it could actually happen. We now have a lot more launch. The costs are going down. There's what's called free rider models where you can essentially rent a place on a launch and put your equipment, and it can go into space, do its thing, and you pay for it to come back. It's like a taxi. That's how I always think. An Uber, exactly. That's someone was explaining it to me. I'm like, so it's basically an Uber with like space. They're like, yes. I'm like, great, I get it.
It's fascinating. We don't know what's going to come out of this, but we know.
So that's one that I think is out there, but it's potentially closer than we think.
And when you see, just switching back to founders and the qualities they need to have, when you see every founder must be telling you that they're here to save the world, what do you think when that happens? A, do you think, fantastic? B, let me see the deck, and C, another Marvel fan?
So founders that want to save the world, I think it's a really great mission to have. And I have read that founders that are mission-oriented do tend to stick to their mission more than founders that are building, I don't know, efficiency for teams or collaborations, things like that. Because there's just something more outside of yourself that you're really building towards. And especially when you're like, what I build can have an impact on people, you can really stick to that and feel every day like I'm waking up with a goal, with something really intrinsically driven that I think it can be hard to have in B2B SaaS.
I can confirm that.
I worked a lot in B2B SaaS. So
but I agree. And I think to a certain extent that applies to the fund you have as well right now, because Voyager is mission-driven as well. Exactly. In fact, on the website, you talk about urgency, but just what's the GPs and the whole partnerships perspective on that?
On the urgency. Yeah. I think it's one where when we talk about it, it's decarbonization isn't an option. It's an absolute need right now. And that urgency drives how we invest, who we invest in, and the types of founders we're looking for that have this drive that they're like, we need this yesterday. So let's make it happen as fast as possible. Sure. We want founders that are really obsessed with that the problem statement that they're going after, so that when the going gets tough, they have that grit to keep going.
Yeah, I love that. It's also sometimes we talk about the immigrant mindset, just having something that's still a bit outside of yourself and that just makes you want to push further. But
exactly. And something to prove maybe.
For sure. I completely understand that. Switching to a lighter note, we're going to switch to quick fire rounds. So
all right, let's
no overthinking, just answer really quickly. So overrated buzzword in climate tech right now.
Dual use.
What's that?
Dual use.
Dual use. Oh, love it. If you could ban one sentence from a founder's pitch, what would that be?
I'm a market-driven entrepreneur.
Biggest greenwashing sin you've ever seen without naming names?
Ooh, greenwashing sin. Oh, I don't know.
Don't worry if nothing comes up.
Something where they sized the market. No, I don't know, actually. No.
You got more time to think about that one.
Sin,
what's one climate technology you secretly think is never going to work? Hydrogen.
Oh, yeah. I mean, work from a tech level or like a market level? Because I think DAC is really proving that.
Actually, that's a good answer. What is a book that you recommend everyone should read to understand the climate urgency?
I haven't read too
many.
Or
a movie, or it could be anything.
What got me into climate and really got me to stick to it was The Omnivore's Dilemma. And I read it before going to undergrad. It was a technically required reading before I went to UC Berkeley. And it was part of the curriculum or something like that. So
who's the author? So we can
Michael Pollan.
Michael Pollan.
I think he's a Berkeley professor. And basically the premise is he tries to cook a meal where he gathers every single ingredient, hunts the meat or gathers the mushrooms, and you just see how actually impossible it is. So it really makes you think about how intricate the supply chains are and just how difficult it is these days.
That's a great reference.
And that's why I went vegetarian. It's not
So you're vegetarian?
Yeah.
Since you started your PhD then?
Yes.
Okay. Interesting. Oh, that was a powerful book.
Thank you. Yes.
So you're all going to be vegetarian after you read this book?
No, you don't have to be. You absolutely do not have to be. That is not the message. I think just reducing meat consumption, it's just like...
Oh, don't worry.
You're 10%.
Preaching
huge benefit.
To the choir. We're in Paris here. What's your toxic VC trait? We all have one.
Why isn't there more revenue?
Thanks for being so honest. I love it. Well, Nare, thank you so much. It's been wonderful. Thank you for bringing both science and heart to this conversation.
Thank you.
And hope you have a lovely stay in Paris.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.